Hello, everyone. This is Cece Schatz, and you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are on the Business Showcase, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Showcase, and we're all about business today. We're going to talk a little bit about helping you move forward in your life in business. And those of you that don't know me, I'm the doyenne of relationship building. I really help connect you with some pretty awesome individuals, moving you through to living a single life that you so desire, and hopefully beyond. That's what we're going for. So we hope that you guys enjoy the show as much as we do. So we're going to get right on to our guest today. I'm going to bring her forward. Her name is Nancy Fulton. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, how are you guys doing today?
It is great having you. You are a career development coaching, and you do leadership development, executive coaching from, you're from all the way from California. So welcome.
Yeah, it's wonderful, the internet, the fact that everybody's very connected these days, you know. It's like, I love I got an email yesterday from somebody that was in Greensboro, Kentucky, and they just finished watching one of a live video that I did. And I'm like, Greensboro, I'm so excited.
Yeah, you know, this morning we just had a show on from India, a gentleman. I produced it here in Florida, and he connected from India, and his guest was from Nigeria.
Yes.
So it's like, wow, I'm loving the internet. I think it's absolutely terrific. It really is.
It is.
Well, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about really creative business, the second life, you know, kind of the second time around. And you're an expert in this. So how did you get into doing what you're doing? Because you do all this career development, leadership development. What made you move forward into doing this type of work?
Well, a few things. One of the things that I think is important for a lot of people to understand is that everybody has a second life, and some people get to have 3 or 4. But I used to be a writer. I used to be a technical writer. I worked for Autodesk, which is a company that makes computer-aided design and animation software, and I taught for UCLA and a whole bunch of other and other schools and so forth. And then I made a transition. Throughout that time, I'd always had a business, and I'd always sort of done teaching and writing. And then I ended up working for a school for startups for about 8 years. And it was located in the UK. And at some point, it just really hit me that I wanted to live and work in the same zip code. So I launched and I had moved into media, and I had a broad interest in helping people learn how to profitably earn a living doing what they love. And so my second life sort of really involved me doing for a living that which I most wanted to do, which was helping people figure out how to become successful writers, producers, screenwriters, performers. And because it's not rocket science, it's not difficult. It just requires you to have a certain understanding of the way the internet and the way the new global media marketplace works. And it's actually never been easier for people to become successful creative business owners. So those are sort of, I guess that's sort of how I ended up moving into this particular phase of my career.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I do think that we all kind of go through stages in our lives, don't we? So, and it's funny because, you know, I'm really connected with a lot of my high school friends. And so often what we thought we were going to end up doing, we totally went a different direction. And then, for instance, for even myself, I went in a whole different direction of what I thought I was going to in high school at a very young age. And then now in my latter part, my senior years or whatever you want to call them, I'm taking a whole nother turn, going into a whole another way. So it's almost sometimes I wonder if it's just about being creative, right?
It is. I think there's this notion that we're taught when we're little children and part of it has to do with the ages in which we came up. It used to be the case that if you were an apothecary in the time of Henry VIII, you would be an apothecary. Your son and your son and your son would be an apothecary, or they're blacksmith or whatever. I mean, a good career could last a family a few generations, you know. But in the 50s, it sort of changed over. Many people would have a full career, and then they might have a second career they did after they quote unquote retired, or they would do something after they retired. But we're now at the point where people have 3, 4, 5, and 6 careers. And also, I think women are particularly subject to this because a lot of times we're raising children. So many of us figure out, we go through our lives. We, we may or may not go to college. We may or may not get some sort of trade training. We follow sort of a career path until we are, while we don't have children. We get married, we have kids, and we really reorganize our lives a lot in order to be able to be, to be home to take care of them or to play a role in raising them. And I think maybe a lot of men do as well. They do as much as they can. And what ends up happening is that at some point the kids go away, and at some point, or the marriage goes away, or you become disabled, or you become some terrible thing happens or some good thing happens, and you just leave that behind. So you have to reinvent yourself. And I think it happens more and more frequently these days. I think there's this notion, a lot of times people have the stigma that comes with the idea that you're going to reinvent yourself, or I'm not doing that anymore, and that sense of having to start at the beginning makes us feel like, we're not successful. But in reality, that's the new world. We live in a world where we have the opportunity, and a lot of times the obligation, to reinvent ourselves. And the trick is becoming good at reinventing yourself, to figure out, to have some knowledge of what you actually like to do, and some knowledge of what you're excellent at, so that you can package those things together in a variety of different ways to serve a variety of different purposes. Whether originally I started out writing and teaching, and then I moved into doing mentoring and coaching and teaching and helping people develop businesses, and now I've moved into much more sort of a online learning, career development, business development, quote unquote, coaching or training facility, which is completely different from the thing that I started out doing. But I've had a business throughout that whole time, 30 plus years. So
you're amazing. You are totally amazing. And so when we talked about your background, previously, just you and I off the camera, and I was just so taken back by the different elements of your work that you've traveled through into. And it made me start thinking about, going through some of the transitions that we go through divorce, or through, any job loss or anything in our lives where we have to make this transition. You have been able to gracefully move forward and not have a fear, and maybe you do have a fear, but your fear isn't so great that it holds you back from trying something new and different and being out there. And I think that's kind of, if we're looking at starting a career again, at the second part of our life, if we're thinking about doing that, it really is embracing that fear that we might very well have, and then moving forward in it, isn't it?
Well, I think also it's the notion that it's, if you don't have the stigma that you're not supposed to be doing it, and you don't have the stigma that it's not normal, and you don't have the stigma that it's not to be expected. If you just go, this is one of the greatest aspects of life. The fact that you can actually follow your interests on a variety of different occasions, and you can make those transitions, and it's normal to make those transitions. And thus, when you're doing one thing, you have your eye open to some of the things you might do next. The other thing is that I think people have a tendency to believe that they won't be successful in making that transition. And generally speaking, if you look, most people do make the transition. Sometimes they make it easy, sometimes they make it hard. But the vast majority of people end up happier in their new life. So it's kind of like, if you see it less as being shoved out of a warm and happy situation to going on to what comes next, I think you'll be happier. Like my kids, I have a 27-year-old now. My twins just turned 18, boy and girl twins. And there's this whole thing they say about, are you upset about the empty nest? And it's like, no, I love the kids and I want to see them be very successful. But I hate PTA meetings. I don't really like parent-teacher conferences that much. I'm not really happy. It's nice that I don't have to get anybody up for school. I mean, there's all kinds of aspects of it I really like. And I like being able to focus back on the things that I wanted to do when I first got started. So I'm happy to retire from the child parenting job. And so I think that welcoming, like, oh, cool, I get to do what comes next, I think is a big part of feeling a lot happier about what lies in the future, and believing that it's normal, and believing that it's part of, we're fortunate to have the opportunity to do so. It really is the case that if we're talking right now in the 1940s, you and I would be having a different discussion, because there would not be a place, women wouldn't have the same ability to be able to make a new life for themselves or a new career. They wouldn't have the ability to meet with, to basically pick who they're going to work with, where they're going to go. They wouldn't have any of the opportunities that we're affording ourselves. So my big feeling is that the opportunity to change is really quite the gift. And you can decide what you're going to change into.
Absolutely. And the thing is it's just a path that we're on.
Right.
I remember when I first started out in radio, and it was an internet radio, of course. And some friends of mine going, oh my gosh, what are you doing internet radio for? That's never going to take off. That's not going to be a big thing. You need to get on regular radio. You need to be on regular, on like they try to get me on cable TV and that kind of stuff. And I really liked the internet. I kept thinking that was really where we were going to go in the future. Whoa, look at where we're at now. Everything is internet. And all the normal stations are going now to internet. So.
I think actually, and one of the things that when I'm training people or coaching people, one of the things I tell them is the future is about having a direct relationship with an audience. And in fact, one of my big memes, I would say, is I tell people, look, everybody, because I live and work here in Hollywood, and there is a huge media industry here, and there's a lot of people who focus their whole careers on how do I get somebody big up there to give me permission to create? How do I get somebody to give me a good job on a show? How do I give somebody to buy my screenplay? And I go, look, here's the thing. You guys are always looking up. Don't look up. Look around, because the people, every single, if you have 10,000 people that and they each have $20 that they'll give you over the course of a year, that's $200,000. So why are you looking up? Do you know anybody up there that's going to give you $200,000?
Yeah, it's really embracing opportunity that's around you. I think that's the thing is, so sometimes we have this steadfast way of looking at things.
Yes.
When we just be open-minded, the first time when I started broadcasting, I was given a show and I thought, well, what the heck, I'll do it. I mean, at the time, no one could see me. So I thought, well, they can't see me. I'll just talk, and I'm always good at talking. But yeah, so I mean, it's just, a lot of people have said to me, why have you been doing the things that you do? And it's because it crosses my path. And when it crosses my path and I sit up and I listen and I think, wait a minute, this is coming into my life for a particular reason. So I'm going to grasp it. Maybe it's only for a season, maybe it's something I'm going to learn from it and move forward, but it's there for a reason. And so I really do feel that all the time in our careers, in our life, the things are right before us if we just open our eyes and make the connections with people. People do want to help you. I've been helped tenfold, from people, and I try to give that back. I try to give all of that back. So wouldn't you say that that's true when you're trying to determine a path for yourself on a career? Isn't it best just to kind of take a breath and look around?
Oh, it is. I always tell people, see the board. So a kind of a weird, funny story about that. I had a desire to produce a short film, and it was a preview for something I thought I might want to turn into a feature. Anyway, long and short of it is, I spent, I want to say, 6 months looking for a place to shoot this thing, and I had budgetary requirements and so forth, on and on. It was just driving me crazy. And then one day, I swear to God, at 2 a.m, I woke up and I thought, my brother-in-law has an entirely empty house. So for 6 months, my brother-in-law had had this entirely empty house, entirely empty. and I had forgotten that it existed in the world. I literally had forgotten that it had, like, and you just sit there and you go, that was sitting there the whole time. So now when I run into a problem that seems insolvable, I really take a big, huge step back and I go, okay, like it's really a trick to go methodically through your whole life and go, I'm not seeing something here. Like, and also recognizing when you get that feeling of desperation, or that feeling of this problem is insolvable, or there's no way for me to do this thing that I want to do, to step back and realize that feeling is a lie. That feeling is a mistake, right? That means you're not thinking clearly. It doesn't mean that the solution's not there. The solution's literally probably 2 clicks away from you, especially in the internet world. Mm-hmm. So the trick is you're not thinking clearly. So step back and go, okay, clearly I'm in a panic. I shall take a break. And then I will come back and start, methodically thinking about the solutions that are available to me. Like who do I know who can help me see more clearly? Who can, what internet search can I do that will show me? Like one thing, people I routinely will say something to me like, I can't find any place to run events or run locations. And I go, what have you tried Googling? And they go, I don't know. And I go, well, you could try free spaces, or at some point you may stumble across peerspace.com, and it's like, but they don't believe it exists. So they don't look for it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it is there. Mm-hmm. Everything you want is, the trick is it's literally right in front of you. You have to go, you might have to like search on your computer, or you might have to talk to 20 friends or 30 friends. But what you're looking for is literally a step away. And again, which is why I recommend, look, when you're trying to sell content, stop looking up, look around. It's, can you find, if you're somebody that wants to write books or tell stories, have you thought about doing a podcast? And do you know anybody that actually likes those kind of stories? Go find them. There's people who like all kinds of stories. So maybe you should figure out how to run ads on Facebook so you can find people that like Stephen King's stories, similar to Stephen King, but maybe not so gory. It's easy to connect to people. It's never been easier to find the people that you want to work with. You have to believe they're out there and go looking for them. You have to say, well, I know you're around here somewhere. I'm going to go find that club of people and I'm going to join it. And I'm going to become a leader in it,
Yeah, that's you're so right on. And so if we're looking at starting maybe stepping mm-hmm. back, thinking, mm-hmm. okay, we've got to start a new career. We're at mm-hmm. a place in our lives where we can't necessarily retire. We're going to move forward and start our own business because, when you get a little bit older, it's harder sometimes to get those jobs, those good paying jobs. So you want to start thinking about, starting a career. How do you go about it? I know that's so vague. I mean, it's
actually, there's a couple of things I'd recommend, especially if you have the freedom not to be totally committed or married to some idea that you have. Okay. Like I only want to be a fine craft furniture maker, like that's a very explicit thing. But if you've got the freedom to be open-minded and kind of go shopping for what you might want to do, one thing I'll show the advice my dad gave me, which was kind of bizarre. My father was an engineer, so I get out of college and I'm thinking I'm going home and I'm pontificating about how I don't really want to know what I want to do with my life and who knows what the future brings. And he looks at me and he goes, "Is this a long-winded way of asking how do you get rich?" And I go, "Yeah, okay, that sounds like a plan." And he said, "Every single person in the world falls onto the bell curve for any given property." So, because let's take an example like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is 7 feet tall. So he has Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's height has served him very well when he plays basketball. And if you think about it, if he had chosen to be, say, an airline pilot, his height would never have been an advantage. And if he had decided that he wanted to be a car salesman, he would have had trouble getting in and out of cars to do test drives. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would have had a problem. And yet the characteristic, this unique characteristic that he has, which would have caused him problem in every other aspect of his life, turns out to be very advantageous in playing at basketball. And not to mention his general very good athletic ability. So what you need to think about is, what is it that you have that's sort of a third standard deviation characteristic? What is it about you that in the past has caused you a great deal of hassle, and yet in some cases turns out to be a superpower? And you mentioned originally about being somebody who likes to talk, and somebody who like the idea, like, and I'm kind of the same way. Like, my desire to talk and my desire to help people sometimes has caused me great kinds of difficulty. Like, somebody tells me they've got a problem, and if I hang out with them too long, it just drives me crazy. I want to help them so much. So it's a distinct disadvantage. It's clearly a property that is overwhelming, and yet channeled correctly, it turns out to be very advantageous. So if people start by looking at themselves and think about, what characteristics do I have? What is it that everybody says about me? Where have I been really successful in the past? What things have I done that I've just been bizarrely successful at? What do people always compliment me on? What has gotten me in trouble in the past? What has really caused me a great deal of difficulty? Right? What property of myself I just, I have to remember, like, I'm constantly reminding myself, don't talk too much, or don't do this too much, or don't spend so much time exercising, or whatever people's properties are. Because if you can build your career on that thing that makes you different, that thing that you just have a natural aptitude for. And strangely enough, some of those aptitudes are really small. Sometimes the aptitude is, I see more colors than everybody else, and they bug me. Like, I've known people who, when you and I, or at least me, like, if I saw 50 different sweaters that were all sort of, beige or pink, be like, yeah, I see 50. For me, they're one color. I have friends, I swear to God, they can see very tiny differences in the colors. And when they put together outfits, they look amazing, and their house looks amazing. Everything looks amazing because they see something I can't see, or I don't know that I can see. And yet they have the capacity to turn that into something that's very pleasing. I have a neighbor who is she likes things a certain way. And my God, she's got the most beautiful house on the block. But, and it's because it is her desire. She's got this idea of perfection, and she will nudge the world into being that perfect. So she is kind of the perfect person to be an interior designer. She is the perfect person to be an architect. She is the perfect person to be a landscape designer. And yet that same property, as she mentions, this can be a hassle. I can't not see it. I can't see it I cannot choose to ignore something that's really ugly. I can't live with it. So people need to look at the things that set them apart, and they need to look at the things that make them different. And those things will actually turn out to be their best friends. And alternatively, working against them will turn out to be their worst enemy. It will guarantee that you won't, it'll help to guarantee that you're not successful, right? If you're the kind of person that has to exercise every day, you're going to find that need to exercise every day is a real problem if you find yourself working, 10 to 15 hours in an office. So you have to kind of go with your strengths, because your strengths will become your greatest weakness otherwise.
Oh, that's so true. And someone told me one time, whatever your biggest fear is will become a reality if you worry about your
biggest fear.
Yeah. So you've got to it really truly is your mindset of what you want your mind to do. And I think if we lead with our heart on what it is that we truly enjoy doing, we enjoy that, then as we move forward, it is the right thing. We'll continuously grow, and that's another thing. Let's talk a little bit about how you have to embrace change, because so often people feel that they have to be so rigid. Like, life isn't rigid, and there is constantly evolving. So there's constant change, and it's the same way in business, isn't it?
It is. Well, and I also think if imagine that you're a cook in a kitchen, and you're sort of there cooking up your life every single day. You're going to be eating the same meal literally every single day, unless it's the case that you allow other ingredients into your kitchen. Furthermore, you can't really stop other ingredients coming into your kitchen. There may be some days you can't get white bread, and so you will be having some kind of pumpernickel sandwich. And there'll be other days where you've got no cinnamon, but you have a lot of cumin. You have to kind of just realize that you're manufacturing your life day to day. Different ingredients are going to come and go, and you're going to end up with a situation where you're going to have to experiment. And the other thing is, it's not going to be permanent. It's one of the best things out here on the West Coast. We all get therapy all the time. And one of the best things a therapist ever said to me was, feelings pass. So you're gonna pass through a time where you're gonna be dealing with problem X. But you know what? Think past problem X, or you've been handed this set of ingredients in your life. This you've been added this particular element that you're not enthusiastic about the day you get it. Well, imagine that you're only going to be having that ingredient for the next 2 or 3 months, or for the next 6 months, and then figure out how to have as much fun as you can with that thing, and then with the understanding that it's going to be short, and move on and focus on the fact that this will pass and you'll have the other thing. Like, I've had friends that during 2007, 2008, I had a lot of friends who had houses and weren't able to make the mortgage payments because 2007, 2008 was really a hard time for a lot of people. And some of them kind of embraced the fact that they had to make new living arrangements, and actually, kind of ended up going off and having quite the interesting life. Do you know what I mean? Like, they said, well, I've lived in California for a long time. I'm kind of burned out on it now, and the prices are high, so I am going to change states. And they ended up moving someplace they really liked that they never would have moved to. So for them, that disaster turned out to be really quite handy. They moved into a different life that they actually like better. So to some degree, realizing that sometimes the things that you don't want turn out to be the things that bring you the most opportunity. One thing that certainly doesn't work very well is constantly saying that this is the worst thing that ever happened to me, and this is a catastrophe, and this will never end. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, I think people do that. Everybody gets, when the worst possible thing happens to you, allowing that feeling to overwhelm you for a while works, and then after that, you kind of have to say, well, maybe not, and move on to and try to work with people. If you really can't let it go, you probably do have to go seek some therapy to sort of figure out how to let up on yourself. But even just having the understanding that it will pass, and that you will end up, for this change, another change will come that you like better. And also, you don't know what you can't really spend your whole life trying to hold the world constant, because that's not really its nature. It's buildings rise and fall, governments rise and fall, marriages come and go, people come and go. It's like, if the more rigid you are in trying to protect this particular iteration of your life that you really like, the more easy it is to ensure that the transition to another life that you are going to end up having to face is harder, because you can't hold back the tide. You can't hold back the change. What you can do is get good at changing, and get good at being flexible. And I think that it's a hard lesson to learn, but I also think that once you realize it's not your fault and you haven't messed up and you're not making any mistakes, that it is the world, that it is the way it is. I think it's easier. I think a lot of times people think, I must have screwed up. I knew a lot of people that had businesses during 2007, 2008, and they lost those businesses. And it was like the world's great recession, right? It was a worldwide recession. How do you, not every business can survive that. There are some businesses that are just not going to make it through that window. You may be able to rebuild it on the other side, but this iteration of what you built is going to go away. So you have to accept that and say, what are we going to do next? What am I going to do during this time period? And not feel bad, like I screwed up. It's like, well, yeah, that happened. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely. Well, I do apologize. They are testing the fire alarms here. So
actually, I can't hear it, so you're fine.
I've been trying to delete it, so I'm sorry. But you are so right. You are so right about that. We're going to just take a quick break. It'll just be a couple seconds, so we'll be right back. I just want everyone to know that. Hey, you guys, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are the #1 internet singles talk network, and I'm so very proud of that. You're listening to our business showcase today, and I am CC Schatz, and I'm the doyen of relationship building. So just hang on for just 1 minute and we'll be right back. Okay, we're coming right back here. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am CC Schatz. You're listening to the Business Showcase. And those of you that don't know me, I am the doyen of relationship building. I really help those that are traveling through probably some of the difficult times in their life and really making that transition into living their best life. And I do it by connecting them with awesome individuals like we have here with us today. Let's bring her back to us. Her name is Nancy Fulton. She's a career development coaching expert. She's a leadership development, executive coaching, and she's all the way from California. So we want to thank her so much for joining us. Cool. So, the first part of the show, I think we talk a lot about, our mindset, the emotional, getting through trying to figure out what it is that we want to do and moving forward into developing a new business, the second part of our life. So what are some of the concrete things that someone could do if they're looking to start their own business? Anything you can suggest?
Well, several things. I think the first thing is to take stock of businesses that they think they might like, and actually make a effort to get out. If you think about it as kind of going shopping, right? Thinking, I think I might want to be a screenwriter. Might want to make movies. I might want to run a podcast. I might want to be a fine cabinet maker. Start heading out to those kinds of businesses and taking a look around and imagine, what if I owned this business, or what if I did this, and start hanging out with people that do that for a living. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One thing is sometimes the grass is always greener on the other side until you realize until you get on the other side and go, wait, this is actually not for me. So the patronizing the kinds of businesses that you think you might want to run someday is important, I think. And spending time taking a look at the people that you think you might want to serve is important. So what's not a good idea, I don't really recommend. People can read books, just read books, and I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. But the problem is that it doesn't really portray the living aspects of running a business. If somebody, for example, I think if somebody is interested in starting podcasts, they would do better to start watching your show, start watching other shows that are similar to your show, find the kinds of show that they want to do, and think about why that show appeals to them so much, and think about who that audience serves, and pay attention to how that show is being marketed and who it's connecting to and how it's finding its market. Not so much in terms of thinking about competing with it, but thinking about what solutions work, finding out how to connect. The other thing is that I personally think people do better when they think about who. They have to think about what they want, but they also have to think about who they're going to serve. Who am I going to help? Who am I going to aid? What problems am I going to solve for the people I support? And the interesting thing is, I think they find that easier than. Life is better when you think about what problems. We can all see problems, especially if we're in a bad mood. We all find it easy to identify problems that we think need to be solved. And when you start looking at people in the world and you think, these people could really use training in how to look their very best. I know a lot of people, they're going out and they're looking for jobs. I have dozens of nieces and nephews, and none of them know how to dress formally because people in their generation maybe didn't go to churches very much, or people in their generation, they just don't know how to look good in a corporate world. Well, that's something that I do know, and I like helping people buy the right clothing. So maybe I should think about running a service that helps prepare people to get good jobs by helping them dress correctly, and helps them learn how to buy clothing so that when they have that job, they continue to look professional. considering who you're going to serve and how you're going to help people, I think for really makes it much easier for people to build a good career, because they're not focusing on what they want. They're focusing on what part of the economy they're going to fit into.
Yeah, that's so true. Sometimes I think if we step out of ourselves a little bit, a lot of answers will come to us. And when we're helping people or we're doing different things, and maybe even find that, that gives us a lot of joy. And
yes.
So, as you move forward into developing your business, you want to do something that you truly do enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can take a shape. And so that's it's very cool. I think sometimes when you talk to some of these business owners and you find out how they started, and sometimes it was just purely by accident that they just fell into doing what they're doing, and it just kept growing. And next thing you know, they're loving the life they're in, and that's pretty awesome. It's very, very awesome. So, any last words you'd like to share with our audience here today?
I think accepting the fact that starting a business is actually relatively easy. It's the mechanics of starting a business are not difficult. And I think one thing you said earlier, which I'd like to echo, is the notion of seeing the board. I sometimes recommend, when people are feeling really stuck and really stressed out, that they get a piece of paper and they list 100 things that they could do right now that would allow them to generate revenue. And I say, and put at the top of that mowing lawns. And then, because everybody, if you've got neighbors and they've got lawns, babysitting. So I know it sounds stupid, but force yourself to actually list 100 things you could do to make money. And that you could run a business, you could start a business if your intention is to start a business, or jobs you could get if your intention is to get a job. But the important thing is come up with 100 solutions. And because that kind of forces you to acknowledge that you've been stuck for a time being, seeing only a small number of options. And when you say, when your task is, the task you have to be successful at is seeing 100 different jobs you could do, or 100 different businesses you could start, even businesses you don't want. The fact that you force yourself to see 100 of them will make it easier to see 105 and 110 and 115, and some 10 of those you might actually want to do. And then you can actually start milling about the world, looking at those businesses and studying those businesses to see if there actually are something that you want to do. And you can actually think about, well, how are they getting customers, or how are they finding the resources that they need? Like if they've decided to become a catering company and they don't have a commercial kitchen, where are they renting their commercial kitchen? That kind of thinking, it just loosens you up. It just makes it so that you stop thinking, you stop refusing to look at the world, and you start looking around at all the opportunities the world actually presents. And I think that really does solve a lot of problems for people. I think it makes it much easier for them to realize that they're not in a jungle, but in a garden,
Very well put. Absolutely well put. Now, if anyone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to do it? I have your email here.
Cool. Actually, that's kind of an interesting thing. So if you want, you're welcome to email me at nancy@audioiron.com. Actually, I do have a podcast. It's called Audio Iron. Go check it out. Mm-hmm. And it talks about creative stuff. But really, you probably want to go to nancyfultonmeetups.com. So I currently support 50,000 entertainment industry pros here in Los Angeles and Greensboro, and a couple of people, I think, from Louisiana and Florida. But if you go check it out, you'll see that it provides very complete instruction about how to earn a living doing writing, screenwriting, filmmaking, and it teaches people how to become independent filmmakers. And in fact, one time I had a phone call from a guy in Indiana, and he said, I've been making these little zombie movies. And in the little zombie movies I make in my little town, everybody always comes out to see them, and they've been really successful. And I think should I move to Hollywood? And I go, no, stay in Indiana where you have support. Just figure out how to sell your movies here in Hollywood. And here's a few links. And my stuff is, I do online and face-to-face events, and I do 4 to 6 events a month. And, usually most of them are online. And I also have more than 140 videos and workbooks that people can actually take advantage of for. So if you go to Nancy Fulton meetups, there's 3 or 4 free workshops you can take advantage of, and then there's also for $50 a year or $60 a year, something like that, you can actually get access to the 140 tutorials and a bunch of live events they do on a regular basis. And so if you're thinking about moving into the entertainment industry, or that you want to actually be somebody who sells media or sells workshop or does performances or does stand-up or does one-person shows or runs theater, go ahead and check it out. You know, I enjoy supporting creative professionals who are determined to earn a living by doing what they love. And I think that the resources that I make resources and events I make available through Nancy Fulton meetups are probably the least expensive way anybody will ever find to achieve that objective. You know, I just want to make it a class that gets better and better and better and better.
That sounds terrific. Now, do I have that correct? It's Nancy Fulton Meetups.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely look you up. I know we have several individuals that have come through our divorce support group that have now gone into the entertainment industry. You know, one was an actress and comedian, you know, so some of the different things that they tapped into that they've always wanted to do. And so, yeah, so I'm just very pleased with that they're able to move forward and start living their dreams. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's exciting,
especially because we're told, one of the lies that we're kind of told, or one of the bad stories that gets propagated, is the notion that you have to be young to be in the entertainment industry. And my experience is actually the older you are, the better, because a whole set of things don't derail you. And like you talk about comedy, some of my favorite comedians here in the entertainment industry, the ones that you see on the Sunset Strip and so forth, they're not young people. They're not. What's great about them is that they are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. What's great about them is they have this whole huge treasure trove of life's experience. And also, they're not shy. You know, when you're young, you're like, oh, I want people to like me. These people, they're just going to tell you the story, and they don't care. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're not trying to paint themselves in this attractive way. They're just trying to tell you, this is actually what happens in my life. You know, they talk about being married, and they talk about the realities of bad bosses, and they talk about the realities of getting divorces, and they've talked, you know, and having kids. They talk about these things, and it's because they actually have life experience to bring to the table. So I think I know an incredible number of people who bring their second life job is actually creating those kinds of stories and sharing them. And I think they're better. They're just literally better.
Yeah.
You know, they can write for young people. I know several of them have decided to write, you know, stuff for young adults, and have had their things produced, but it just gives them so much more to draw on, you know? So I encourage people, if you have a desire to work in the entertainment industry, you have a desire to create media for an audience, you should pursue it. It's not don't listen to anybody who tells you it's a disadvantage. You have an advantage because you have more to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, life experiences are always better, you know, than I don't know, maybe fiction.
Exactly, fantasy, like people's fantasies, and you're like, yeah, you know, the thing was, I have to tell you, I've seen Cinderella and I've seen Sleeping Beauty, so if you're gonna tell me any like those kinds of fairy tales, that's fine, but that's not going to be as good as the real stories.
Yeah,
you know, of how people got married, or more true to life, shall we say?
Yeah. Know? Well, actually, you know, I tend to wonder if some of those things are based on real life experiences anyhow, you know, with a little bit of play in it to make it entertaining. But yeah, so really a lot of that we do see is based on our real life. And so we might as well embrace it and live it out the best we can.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. But you're a delight to have on the show. And it's just so wonderful, you know, having you here and talking about business. And you've been doing this and touching lives for so long, helping those move forward. And so I really want to thank you for coming on the show and helping our listeners too.
You're amazing. And I also think the work that you do is very important, because I think it makes, I like the notion, and I haven't heard a lot of other people ever use it, the notion of a second life. And I think it's really a critical idea, that it is an opportunity to do all the stuff that you didn't do before. It's not a bad thing. It's like, you know, what's next, you know? So I think your show and the the way that you frame things is really important to people, and it provides for people that are going through a dark moment or people who are struggling. It provides maybe one of the most important notes they hear in terms of, wait, maybe this isn't what you think. Maybe this is actually good. Like, let's look at what's next.
Yeah, because you'd be surprised at what's out there for us. You know, just, and like we said, the first part of the show, if we just stop for a minute and think about it. Oh, we had a comment here.
Oh,
I didn't say. Oh yeah, right here. Someone said it's different. Yes. Well, thanks. Right on, Sherry. We appreciate you watching the show.
Thank you.
I didn't catch that at the beginning, but that is awesome. That is awesome. But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we want to live our lives the best we can, you know, and as we go forward in it, just do the best that we can do. That's all that's I think is expected of us, is just live it to the fullest.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I want to thank you so much for joining us. You've just been wonderful. And again, y'all, if you want to reach her, it's NancyFultonMeetups.com. Just go there. And I'm glad so much that you were with us today. It's been very entertaining, very enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I deeply appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, gosh, the time flies, doesn't it? I mean, it's just these just shows just go so quickly, and I learn so much, and I hope that you all learn so much too. So this is what we have them for. But you guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the Business Showcase. I am CC Schatz, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.